question?
You know these stables?
Stable?
Who do they belong to?
They belong to the village, but in fact we acquired those with the village. They are Williamson's original stables, built at the same time as the house. I should have mentioned, apologies. They are magnificent brick stables with Oscar's quarters built on the end. The original coach doors are still there, intact, except changes inside. And give us the opportunity eventually to loop the entrance road right around the back of the stables, so the two of those ultimately, of course, I think if James elects to keep his collection here, storage needs to grow with time, so it's an opportunity to. Yes, have a look at the stables as you go out the driveway on the left.
The extension just up here, it's obviously built on.
To the north?
Yeah, as you're coming in, yes. How long has that been there?
A few months. That's an art storage book, that's right.
It's very good, but I mean, it's obviously not, it's not the same design as the rest of the house.
You're talking about the one right at the far end, first thing you see as you come down the
Butted
road.
right against the house. The piece that's butted right against the house.
Long ago. Oh no, that's been there right from the beginning. It was an open yard. It was roofed over. I lived during Cannon Smallfields. Just as that was the long room was roofed over. Yeah, laundry area. It was originally the open yard, just a wall through which there was a gate where deliveries could be brought. The gate is now restored back in that position. But it was roofed over quite early in the St John's Collegiate days, creating workshop.
It definitely looks a little different to the rest of it.
It does. Although, one of the great things about this house, it's interesting to compare it with John Logan Campbell's house, which once sat on Point Resolution, out beyond Parnell Rose Gardens. Logan Campbell's was by the same architect, Thomas Marnie. Marnie designed both houses so that there was a main house. This is the bit here, the great house at the tower. And then there was sort of servants' quarters, and then there was yards, and there was laundries. Here, they're all in the line. So when you look at it from out in the driveway, Marnie's assembled a big house, symmetrical with its tower, and then stuck on the side of it, what would be a perfectly respectable two-storey suburban house. That was kitchens and stores down the ground floor, and servants' quarters up top. Then it drops to one story, and coming down all the time, drops to one story with other storage rooms and servants' day quarters. And then it dropped to the open yard. So when you go down the stairs into the long gallery, or a small flight of stairs, that leads you outside. So it's long since been roofed over. I suppose James is aware that in my mind I'd like to see the roof off, but it was too good a space for a long gallery and very large works of art.
Thank you.
To do that.
Thanks.
Moving. No, it's all right. I can remember in 1944, when I was aboard in there, used to walk down there and down those steps that you mentioned, and it was all covered then. And you were right down the end, the showers were down there, the toilet was down there. And that was a room that sort of unit room.
Yes, the room was a tiled area.
Sorry, could you use the microphone because we can't hear?
Sorry. This is very interesting what this gentleman has to say.
I can,
Yeah.
can you hear that?
Get it close.
I can remember in 1944, when you walked down the end of this building, you came to those steps that you mentioned, and that room went right back to showers and toilets, and it was covered then. And we used to use it as an indoor games room, and it was quite a big room there.
I think it was probably covered over, roofed over sometime after 1900, but I'm not absolutely certain.
Yeah. And the stables, the nuns used them as a laundry. They did the laundry down there, and they baked the bread down there. And They had a farm down there. So we got milk and bread from the bakery down there.
The tessellated tile floor is still there in what side of the laundry or one with the tile floor at the far end of the yard?
Yeah, don't run. Try to.
And the door that leads out of that yard in this corner to the outside is very interesting because it has thick plaster on the wall which are inscribed all sorts of messages and names and political comments. I'm not sure whether it's the detention room. But the girls obviously at one stage were all shut in there for various periods. And the paint barely covers all these messages. We haven't taken that off, although there's now air conditioning equipment in that room.
How much land is here?
It's currently 40, 60 years or something. Something of that order. It's a lot less than the farm. The farm went way out over into suburban hills and everything. The friary was part of the farm. It went right down to Pah Road at least, and pretty much the entire block with some bits up beyond that. 4 square.
One wonderful aspect of the house that I wanted to mention is the artists department upstairs. The James Wallace Arts Trust and the University of Otago have clubbed together to make a wonderful apartment available to artists who can be in residence for a few months at a time. I'm lucky enough to be there at the moment and I'll be there until the end of March. It will be available to artists who have held one of the fellowships at Otago, so I held the Gwen's Fellowship there, I'm a writer, but it will also be made available to composers and choreographers in the future. And I don't think many members of the public know that it's up there and that they're free-range artists, but it's another wonderful dimension to the house.
It's a lovely facility, and it was in fact the original service station. There were 3 bedrooms in a row with a small bathroom and kitchen. 2 of the bedrooms have been opened up to make a sort of bed set. The third one is still a separate room. They're not on the public circuit, so you don't get to see those. An interesting aspect to both the trust offices, which are up above here, and the apartment, is that throughout the house we've recovered the original colours that the rooms have been painted. There was a salmon pink, sort of bluey greys, and a deep turquoisey green colour. That green was almost throughout the whole house. It's almost a bit overpowering. But in those spaces that don't require the neutrality of white for paintings, we have repeated the original colours that were found in the house. They were horrible materials. I think the green was some sort of awful arsenic antimony colours. You don't sand it like paint over it quickly.
Will the public ever have the opportunity to get up and see the
Sorry.
Will the public ever have the opportunity to get up to the tower to see the views from the tower?
It's a lovely spot. It's the nicest part of the house, but we couldn't make it comply with fire and egress requirements to have it fully open to the public. So it is sad. It is there still though.
Can you tell us what is the school is opened?
Sorry, can you take the microphone over your head? Okay.
I just want to know when the school opened. What is the school?
I'm not sure the exact date, but it's after 1913 in that period. Sisters, you go over the top when the primary schools actually. It was open in the middle. After that period, it wasn't there in 1912. So sometime after that period. Probably the school can tell us. Sorry, it's just a fact I don't have to hand.
So I read the school.
Yes, I'm sure that will.
Okay, sorry to interrupt the questions, but I've got just a little subscript to add to George's talk, and that's to talk a little bit about some of the more recent history, or relatively recent history of this place. It's hard to believe when we look at the opulence and the beauty of this place that with artists and residents and people lining up to live upstairs, that there was a time when nobody lived here. And going back to the early 1980s, it was a state when the building was in perhaps in a more modest state of appearance. And at that time, the Vincent de Paul Society, it was a Catholic support services group, they approached the then Catholic Bishop of Auckland, Bishop Dennis Brown, and they were looking for a property to house homeless people. And the bishop agreed to that, so this became a place for homeless people to live in, and going back to the early 1980s, and you can imagine it was in a bit of a state, not quite as it's looking today, and there was a team of people who came in, young Catholic youth people who came in to do a bit of painting and renovating. That was led by one of South Auckland's well-known lawyers today, Paddy Driscoll. And then we had some of the sisters from retired, or people, some of the sisters who, mercy nuns who left the teaching profession, they came and lived here and helped to manage the place, and as did some Maris brothers. And then after a period of years when there were homeless people living here, there were a group of refugees who came to live here as well. Some of you no doubt were connected with that work and remember it well. And there was an opening, I'm not sure when it was exactly, but an opening sort of similar like today in a more modest way, and that was opened by the then and the current MP, Phil Goff, who is a link to that time. He's not here today, but he was one of the people connected with the opening of that time then. So that's all I've got to say. I know there are a lot more questions there, and a lot of you are itching to get out and explore the place. I'll hand it back over to George and the questions.
One thing I didn't mention that was quite interesting, that when we explored below the floor in order to put the air conditioning in, we found a few relics. We found the odd crucifix and clay pipes, which we've actually mounted in the frame and given to the school. But interestingly, we found a few little stashes, cigarette packets, beer bottles, along with little notes written by schoolgirls saying, "We stole these bottles from so-and-so, and today we drank them." Left for posterity. I'm not sure where the clay pipes came from. I know that there are occasional records of pipe smoking nuns, but so a little stash of things occur variously around the house. One person I didn't realise was here that I want to acknowledge, and that's Anthony Matthews. Anthony, come forward a bit. Anthony was the architect for this project, who had the enormous responsibility of documenting what was here, what we inherited, and what it could become, and all the labyrinth of drawings and details instructing the contractor on how to do it and then overseeing it. Yes, and James has just reminded me that they actually acquired an NZIA, New Zealand Institute of Architects Award, and well recognised.
I'd just like to point out that Chris and Chris are here also. Chris Powell's worked on restoring all the timber work that you can see throughout here, so all the parquet floors, all the doors. So he was one of many of the craftsmen that were involved. There was Daniel Collard who did a lot of work on the from Christchurch, from Dunedin, restoring all the ceilings and plasterwork. And Chris Allen also helped us on some of the external plasterwork and restoration. So thank you, George. Thank you.
With due respect to Anthony, I think we should mention his wife, Jane.
Indeed.
Spent a whole year in Italy studying heritage architecture, and the work on the restoration of the heritage aspects in this, I think, is absolutely superb.
That's right, Doctor. Thank you.
Do you know anything about the alleged piano-playing ghost that was here in the 1980s?
No, I don't. That probably is a fairly spooky building in the depths of the night. I'm not sure what part of the building did the piano-playing ghost appear in.
I'm not sure that was
Still and his friends were here renovating. They step. It's a grand piano playing ghost.
Over that period, interestingly, there was a number of filming episodes went on here. The building was much more derelict than you see now. We had some music videos made here. They elaborately repainted a whole lot of calligraphy on the upper floor. And we also had Narnia, the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, filmed here, although I don't think it made the cut into the final movie. But they were a little bit liberty-taking with the building. And as a result, some of the stuff that you see in Chrissy's photographs of wallpaper looking as though it's in the last stages of decay and about to fall off was actually created by the film company to make the building look even more derelict than it really was. That's basically why now when a film company does anything substantial in the heritage venue, we take very hefty bonds. $50,000.
You said that James Wilkinson, who built this house, he spent about $30 million in today's terms on it, which Calvert and Indy is about the same that the gentleman down on Paratoa Drive is meant to be spending on his house. But can you said something about the Welsh slate on the roof. What about some of the other materials used? What are the fireplaces, for instance? Where does the marble come from?
The white ones are Carrara. In the cafe there is a black breccia marble which is quite lovely. It's interesting that that black one, the greatest fireplace in the house, was regarded as an inferior marble for some reason. I'm not sure where that comes from. It's certainly Europe. I don't think it's Italy because I don't know of a black breccia marble from Italy, but these are pure Carrara, the same marble that Michelangelo used for David and all the other great sculptures. The house basically is brick. All the interior and exterior walls are brick. It's interesting that, and it's plastered of course inside and out, which is why you don't see it. What we did do out of interest was acknowledge the fact that in the gallery not only paintings needed to be hung, but sometimes solid artworks might need to be affixed to the wall. So we have provided screens like this that can be drilled and screwed into it and cut and whatever freely. They're fixed once to the outside wall, so ultimately they could be removed without any loss to the plaster. The comment I made earlier about Thomas Marnie having plans of great houses in Britain at his disposal, and the record that I read said that Mr. Marnie, under Williamson's guidance, modified some of these plans. And it's quite interesting that, where are we? Above us here we actually have a heavy brick wall on the next story, and there's one across this room about where the chandelier is. And there are massive brick walls like that, nothing underneath them. Now in the British examples, the top floor and the bottom floor were exactly the same, and the house was extruded, so everything was supported. And I have a very strong suspicion that Mr. Williamson said, I don't want a wall here, I want a big room. So poor old Marnie had the job of saying, how can I put this multi-ton brick wall up there with nothing underneath it? And interestingly, what they did was obviously they put some heavy timber beams underneath it. But that wouldn't be enough to hold the brick, they would fold. But inside the ceiling space, on the top of that wall, there is a heavy timber truss. You know, like the old railway bridges used to have those big square timbers and the big trusses? There's a truss like that sitting on top of the wall, and bolts run from the top of that truss right down through the wall into the beam underneath. And they compress the wall, so they make the wall function as a beam under compression. There had been, I think in almost every case, Anthony, there was a bit of sag anyway, so we've had to flitch the timber beams and just gradually straighten things up. But it's very interesting, that was quite an innovative structural approach to hauling walls out, where in the models, the original plans, I'm certain there were walls.
Hi, I was just wondering what happened to the wonderful grotto that was just parked outside the old chapel, and also do the tunnels that we believe under the house, do they still exist?
The tunnel was partly legendary. There were certainly spaces under the house that you could go, for quite a long way. You could go from one end of the house to the other if you knew where to get down. We don't know of a tunnel underneath. It wouldn't be impossible because underneath here is very fine, quite firm ash from the volcano. In fact, it's legendary that when they came to build this house, they confidently dug wells to get water for their concrete. And they got down 30 metres and there was no water. And they gave up. It's incredibly dry. However, underneath the long gallery are the original brick water tanks. Manholes in the gallery floor, and if you go into that gallery now you'll see a new floor, but with still modern manholes in it, lead you through into two huge brick water tanks that took water off the roof. And it was covered with quite heavy creeper growth when we put the building over. The statue had gone. It was heavy basalt construction, and in fact, in looking at it, we realised that it was in very bad shape. And we asked the engineer, tell us what you think should happen. He analysed it, pushed and probed, and had a very close look at it. He gave us three options for the grotto. He said, one, you put a fence around it at least 3 metres away because one day it's going to fall in a heavy wind. Or you spend quite a bit of money pressure injecting it, which we looked at and realised we didn't have the money for, or you demolish it. Sadly, the demolition took place so fast that the rock wasn't actually kept, and it should have been, because we would have been quite happy to rebuild. We are happy to rebuild a grotto at the new school location. It would be nice for it to be the original rock. But some things happen too fast sometimes. So I don't know, I'd love to find a tunnel underneath, but there are many apocryphal tales of tunnels under Auckland, like from North Head to Bastion Point, that you could drive cattle through and things like that.
Why don't you rebuild the grotto here, given that this site has been associated with that grotto for a long time, and also I think at some stage some monument to education needs to be here, speaking as one of the ex-parents from Monte Cecilia.
That has been suggested. I guess in some ways the grotto without the statue loses a lot of meaning. And in fact we would be building it out of new material anyway. We have made an offer to build it, or Auckland City Property has made an offer to build a new one that would function as a real grotto with the statue at the new school site. Yes, it could have been rebuilt, it could have been taken apart and rebuilt, but money wasn't endless on the project, even though it was in the region of 5.5–6 million.
Excuse me, sir. Did Edward Marnie design the Ranfurly War Veterans Home up here in Three Kings? Do you know? I find certain parallels, you see.
Yeah, I can't say for certain he did. One of the issues is that sometimes you look at two buildings and you think they're the same architect, surely. In fact, they had the same pattern books. Different architects with the same pattern books. And, right up even relatively modern periods like Deco, people worked out of books of details and decorative motifs, and it can be very confusing. Marnie, has a big opus of work around Auckland. Sad that Logan Campbell's house was rather quickly demolished when they wanted to put Tanuki Drive across the waterfront to cut the end of the headland. It's a house of this calibre, equally interesting in its history.
Do you have any further knowledge of the Williamson family after they left here?
We had hoped today to have a granddaughter of James Williamson present, but my understanding is she hasn't been able to come, but we're certainly following that up because we know from records at the time and Encyclopedia of New Zealand, that big bound volume from which that illustration came, we know quite a lot about it during its tenure, the family's tenure here. After that we don't. The family is still out there, so we're hoping that our contact with the granddaughter will flush out better photographs and more history of the family after that period.
May I talk to you later?
I'd love to.
Any other takers?
Okay, well, enjoy your time here and don't forget to come back.
Thank you all for coming. I'd just like to say a few thank yous. Firstly to Chrissy, without whose idea to have these photographs and exhibit them upstairs, we really wouldn't have, this event wouldn't have happened, so she really inspired that. Of course to George Farrant, his passion for the Pah Homestead is really infectious, and I think you agree he's given a fantastic talk today, and I'm sure he'll answer many of your questions afterwards. He really ensured that the renovation has honoured the heritage values of the homestead, so we're very grateful. Of course to James Wallace, without whose generosity and contribution this place wouldn't be open 6 days a week free of charge. People are unaware that we're actually not publicly funded, so your donations are very welcome. Finally, thank you to everybody who came in. Sorry, Matthews, the team, the architects, for what a fantastic job. I mean, it's just beautiful and a real pleasure to work in. So thank you all for coming out. I hope you've enjoyed your day, and please come visit again. The exhibitions, like George said, they change over frequently, so you'll always see something different when you come. Thank you.